Hello everyone, this is Robin Warder, and welcome to a special bonus episode of The Trail Went Cold. You might remember that back in January, we released an episode where we conducted an interview with Scott Reeder, a longtime journalist who put together a true crime podcast called Suspect Convictions, which covered the 1990 murder of a 9-year-old girl named Jennifer Lewis and the controversial conviction of a suspect named Stanley Liggins. Well, Season 1 of the podcast has concluded and was a big success, so Suspect Convictions has just returned for Season 2 and will be featuring a different case about another controversial murder conviction. Scott contacted us and asked if we would like to interview him again about this new season, so we happily brought him back to talk about it. Have a listen. Okay, I'm here with Scott Reeder, the host of the Suspect Convictions podcast. We had him on here several months ago to talk about the release of Suspect Convictions Season 1, and here we are many months later, and they've released Suspect Convictions Season 2 has just started. The episode number 1 launched just a couple days before we're recording this. So before we talk about Season 2, Scott, maybe you'd like to give us just a quick recap of your background as a journalist and how Suspect Convictions Season 1 came about.
Well, I've been a journalist for about 30 years. I've worked for newspapers and news services during that period of time. And, about a year and a half ago, I decided, I want to try something of my own. And I was wanting to write a book about a murder case I covered as a young reporter. It was a horrible case involving a 9-year-old girl that had been kidnapped, strangled, sexually assaulted, and then taken to a school playground and set on fire. They arrested an African-American man several days later. I was always kind of skeptical of the evidence they had against this guy. I had no problem believing he was a bad man. I just had a problem believing that they had sufficient evidence to charge him in this crime. And I investigated this case, we found that the key witness against him had been a undercover police informant in 83 other cases, and she just happened to be the person that looked out her window and saw taillights that she said she'd recognize anywhere. Well, of course, the fact that she'd been an undercover police informant had never been disclosed to the defense, yet alone to the jury. That was problematic. There were some documents that were not turned over to the defense, or at least a appellate court found that they hadn't been turned over to the defense. But there also was a cellmate that was with the guy who had said that he had confessed to the crime. I hunted down the cellmate, who was a career criminal, and he said, well, the reason I testified is because the police said if I didn't, they were going to charge me as accessory to murder. And, of course, the police couldn't have charged him with accessory to murder, but he contends that they threatened him with that, and that's why he testified. We also found there was a recent immigrant from South Africa who expressed white supremacist views that was on the jury. Not only was he allowed on the jury, but his wife was put on the jury with him. So we found a lot of real anomalies in that first season as we investigated the case. He's going to have a new trial this spring, probably. Sometime next year. I'm guessing this spring. We haven't set a trial date yet. And it'll be interesting to see how that case shakes out.
Yes, before we move on to Season 2, I was just curious about what your plans were to close off Season 1, because I know you were hoping that the trial would be the end of Season 1, but it got delayed till 2018. So are you planning to do maybe...
we closed out Season 1 saying there's going to be a trial, and we're going to return to, when there is a trial, we're going to return to it, cover the trial gavel to gavel every day for 2 to 3 weeks.